Module 1, Lesson 16, From Ratios to Rates. So we have explored the basics of ratios, we have worked on equivalent ratios, and now we're going to start to look at some of the cool things that ratios can do for us. Learning targets. We are now really stepping into the second learning target here, looking at the fixed relationship between two values, looking at the unit rate. Now, of course, with all of this, we are going to be looking at ratios, making those comparisons, and we are, of course, going to be working with equivalent ratios. All right, so today, I can connect a ratio relationship, so 5 miles for every 2 hours, we've got our ratio language in here, to a new quantity. So we're going to take our ratio and we're going to express it as 2.5 miles per hour, and we're going to call that a rate. I can write a rate for a given ratio, so if somebody gives you a ratio, you can say, okay, I can turn that into a rate. And I can identify the unit rate and the rate unit. So there are some parts to these rates that we will be looking at. All right. So the idea here is that we can take ratios and we can transform them to rates, and from rates we can get them to the unit rates. So for example, Diet Cola was on sale last week, and it cost $10 for every 4 packs of Diet Cola. And the question is, how much do 2 packs of Diet Cola cost? So this would be a time to pause the video and see if you can answer these 2 questions. One way to approach this problem would be to set up our table of equivalent ratios, and we could have the packs of the Diet Cola, and we could have the cost, and we could say that 4 packs would be $10, and then I can scale down and say, all right, so 2 packs, and I can say that I've multiplied by a half or I divided by 2. So I'll divide by 2, and I would find out that 2 packs would be $5. And if I wanted to extend this and take it out to 1 pack, I would divide by 2 again. So scaling down some more, and have 1 pack and find out that it would cost $2.50. So what we've got here is we have this ratio, $10 for every 4 packs, and we have turned it into a rate, and more importantly, a unit rate. So let's take a look at some of the vocabulary words that we're throwing around here. So a rate is a ratio relationship. This 10 for every 4 packs can be written as the rate of $2.50 per pack. Now there's a really important word that keeps coming up as we use rates, and you will hear per. And we'll discuss kind of what the per means. Within the rate, there are 2 parts. We have the unit rate, and the unit rate is 2 5/10 because it is the value of the ratio. And we have the rate unit, which is the dollars per pack. And those are the words. So here we have the unit rate as the value, and we have the dollars per pack as the rate unit. So the unit rate is the value, the rate unit is the label, and as we talk about the value, it's important that we understand it is the value, and we're doing it having the value be per 1 or for 1. So when we take a ratio and we want to write it as a unit rate, we want to take the rate and get it to a unit rate, we need to get it down to a 1. So for example, if I've got 5 cats. Oh, let's see, let me do it this way, make it an easy one. I've got 10 cats for every 5 dogs. I need to get it all the way down to 1 dog. So I need to scale that down to being a 1. So I divide by 5, and I find that I have 2 cats per 1 dog, or 2 cats for 1 dog. This is now a unit rate because I am down to a single unit. I'm down to 1 of something. So the big difference here is, instead of finding ratio values that are 3 to 2, we'd actually have to take the next step, and we'd have to find out it's 1.5 to 1. This is largest possible units. We can't easily simplify that down, but we do have to take it down to a 1 to be into a unit rate. All right, so exploratory challenge. Tegan went to Gamer Realm to buy new video games. Gamer Realm was having a sale, $65 for 4 video games. He bought 3 games for himself and 1 game for his friend Diego. But Tegan does not know how much Diego owes him for the 1 game. And we are looking for the unit price, the price for 1. And that unit price is, of course, going to be our unit rate. And the rate unit is the label, the words that go with it. So I've got a few different strategies I could use on this. I could certainly set this up as a table of equivalent ratios. So I've got the cost, the dollars, and the number of games. So I start out with 65 and 4, and I could scale this down. I could divide by 4 and get 1, and then I have to take 65 and divide it by 4. I'm going to run out of writing room. And I find out that each of them is 16 and 25 hundredths. So the unit price is $16.25, and the rate unit is actually dollars per 1 game, dollars per game. So it's actually a little tricky here. Would probably want to get rid of that dollar sign there. And so the unit price is 16 and 25 hundredths, and we would say dollars per game. So you'll notice that as we're working with as we're working with rates, unit rates, rate units, what we're doing here is we're simply scaling our ratios. But what we're really doing, and most importantly, is we're scaling down. We're trying to get down to 1 of something, which some of you figured out when we worked with equivalent ratios. It was really useful if you could scale down to 1 of something. It made it easy to make comparisons. All right, Exploratory Challenge B. 4 football fans took turns driving the distance from New York to Oklahoma to see a big game. Each driver set the cruise control during his or her portion of the trip. Cruise control, you set the speed on the car and it just stays at that speed. So enabling him or her to travel at a constant speed. The group changed drivers each time they stopped for gas and recorded their driving times and distances in the table below. Of course, on mine, the table is to the right. So taking a quick look here, we see that Andre traveled 208 miles and it took him 4 hours. And Mateo traveled 456 miles and drove for 8 hours. And Janae drove 300 miles and traveled for 6 hours. And Grayson drove 265 miles for 5 hours. So the question is, what quantities are being compared? What is our ratio comparison here? Well, we are comparing distance and time. Specifically, we are comparing miles to hours. So we are going to have a ratio of miles to hours. That is our comparison. So the two quantities being compared are distance and time, and we're measuring them in miles and hours. And so what is the ratio of the two quantities for Andre's portion of the trip? So I want to point out right here that we have our rate unit. Our rate unit is going to be this ratio, this comparison of miles and hours. That's the rate unit. Now we're going to look at the numbers to find unit rate. We're going to look at the number part of these ratios and determine what this means. So what is the ratio of the two quantities for Andre's? Well, Andre's is a ratio of 208 to 4, and I want to scale this down. So I'm going to divide by 4 over here and 1 hour, and I'm going to take 200 and divide it by 4 and find out that it's 52. So I have scaled down to 1 of something so that I can have a single unit. A single unit of what? A single unit of the hours. So I'm going to find out that Andre has traveled 52 miles for 1 hour. And right here, I've got the unit rate, and here I have the rate unit. And all together, this is the rate. 52 miles for 1 hour. We changed the for 1 to the word per. 52 miles per hour. So altogether, rate. The 52 is the unit rate. The miles per hour is the rate unit. 3 different parts to these. Well, 3 different parts isn't quite the right way to say it. 3 different vocabulary words to know. Okay, so we are going to answer these same 2 questions for the other 3 drivers. So I've got Andre, and I'm just going to quickly put his down here. He was 208 to 4, and that turned into a 52 to 1. So Mateo has a ratio of 456 to 8, and I need to do some scaling here. 456 to 8. Going to divide by 8 and scale this down. Divide by 8 and scale this down. 456 divided by 8. 5 times 8 is 40. 56. All right, so he's got 57 to 1. So when I scale it down, I find out that I have 57 miles for every 1 hour, which gives me, and I really need to write these correctly, 57 miles per hour. So there's a rate. And I guess I should fix Andre's here. 52 miles per hour. So the rate has 2 parts here. It's got the unit rate, and it's got the rate unit. All right, taking a look at Janae. Janae has a ratio of 300 to 6. And so I need to take that 300 to 6, and I'm going to scale down by dividing by 6. Divide by 6. And I'm going to find out that I have 50 to 1, and that is going to turn into 50 miles for 1 hour. Altogether, this is going to make a rate. My rate has two parts. It has the unit rate, and it has the rate unit. Now, just something to clarify here, this 50 comes from my scaled down ratio. The ratio of 50 to 1 has a value of 50 over 1, which can be simplified to be 50. So you'll remember we talked about rates are when we're getting down to value, most importantly, values that have a denominator of 1. All right, Grayson. Grayson is 265 to 5. And we'll scale that down by dividing by 5, and scale that down by dividing by 5. 265 divided by 5. 5 times 5, 25, 15, 53. 53 miles in 1 hour. So here's my 53 to 1 ratio. 53 to 1 has a ratio of 53 over 1, which is the same as 53. This 53 becomes the unit rate. The miles per hour is the rate unit. And all together, 53 miles per hour is a rate. All right, I've already done this next question. For each driver in parts 2 and 3, circle the unit rate and put a box around the rate unit. And I've already done this, but we'll do it again. So here we've got unit rate, rate unit, unit rate, rate unit, unit rate, rate unit, unit rate, rate unit, and all together, this is a rate. 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 All right, a publishing company is looking for new employees to type novels that will soon be published. The publishing company wants to find someone who can type at least 45 words per minute. Dominique discovered that she can type at a constant rate of 704 words in 16 minutes. So she types constant, steadily, for 16 minutes, and she counts up her words and says, hey, I've got 704 words. And then she says, wait a minute, do I qualify for the job? Is she fast enough to get this job at 45 words per minute? Now I want to point out here that 45 words per minute is a rate. It has a unit rate of 45. It has a rate unit of words per minute. And so what I need to do is take Dominique's ratio, this 704 to 16, and I need to turn it into something that I can compare with the standard set by the publishing company. The standard set by the publishing company is set for 1 minute, but Dominique's information is set for 16 minutes. So I need to take Dominique's information and I need to scale it to be 1 minute. So I'm going to need to divide by 16. I need to scale it down. And then I need to scale the 704 the same way. So 704 divided by 16. 16 times 5 is 80. 80 is going to be a little bit big, so I'm going to do 16 times 4, which is 64. And that will leave me with 64. And I'm going to find out that Dominique has a ratio of 44 words for 1 minute. So now I'm going to take and turn that into a rate. And I see that she's got 44 words per minute. And now I can answer the question. Does Dominique type fast enough to qualify for the job? And Dominique is doing a great job with her typing, but I have to say no. She is not typing at a fast enough rate. The rate the company is looking for is 45 words per minute. She is only typing at 44 words per minute. She is short 1 word per minute. 44 words in 1 minute is less than 45 words in 1 minute. Once again, I want to point out that we have the unit rate, that value, we have the rate unit, which is the words, our label, tells us what the number means, and all together, we have a rate. All right, so some things to think about. What are some examples of rates? Rates are one of those things that are around us all the time. We use them, whether or not we recognize it. Have you ever been to a restaurant and they sell you 5 for $5? Have you ever bought something and they would give you 12 for $4? These are examples of rates. Some examples of unit rates are when we go to the restaurant and we figure out then that I'm getting one for $1, or it's $1 per, and I'm just going to use food item, because who knows what restaurant it is. Maybe it's Taco Bell, maybe it's McDonald's. 12 for $4. Well, I need to scale that down to find out what $1 gets me, or what 1 costs. $1 would get me 3 per $1. Or we can turn it around and scale it the other way, and we can actually divide by 12 and find out it's 4/12, which is 1/3 of a dollar, about 33 cents. And we would find out it's 1 for, let me do it this way, 33 cents for 1. So these are unit rates. Now, other unit rates that you may have heard, if you've ever been to the gas station when your parents fill up the car, you are paying for the gasoline per gallon. So you have dollars per gallons, and there's a price for each 1 gallon. When you go to the store, you buy milk by the gallon, you buy eggs by the dozen, you buy cereal by the box. So these are all examples of unit rates. And something cool when you go to the grocery store, if you look at the price tags, down in the corner, they'll usually actually have a price per ounce for many things. So your cereal, you can see how much you're paying per ounce, so you can compare with different size boxes. So we are surrounded by rates and unit rates. All right, so a rate is a quantity that describes a ratio relationship between 2 types of quantities. So in the examples that we've looked at today, we were comparing miles and hours. These are 2 different types of units, but we are comparing them together to make a rate. We're using a ratio relationship and making a rate out of these. We were also looking at words and minutes. These are 2 different things that we're counting here, but we are comparing them. So for example, 15 miles per hour is a rate that describes a ratio relationship between hours and miles. If an object is traveling at a constant 15 miles per hour, then after 1 hour it has gone 15 miles. After 2 hours it has gone 30 miles. After 3 hours it has gone 45 miles, and so on. So there is a table of equivalent ratios there. 15 to 1, 30 to 2, 45 to 3. This is a table of equivalent ratios, and we are comparing miles to hours. When a rate is written as a measurement, the unit rate is the measure. It's the numerical part of the measurement. So when we measure here 15 miles per hour, the 15 over 1, the 15, that's the unit rate. So for example, when the rate of speed of an object is written as the measurement 15 miles per hour, the number 15 is the unit rate. The unit of measurement, so what we're actually measuring here, is miles per hour. And we call that the rate unit. All right, so wrapping up, first lesson. So a lot of overwhelming stuff. There's really a lot of vocabulary that we need to make sure that you're solid on. But hopefully you can look at a ratio relationship and say, hey, this ratio relationship can be turned into a rate. And hopefully when someone gives you a ratio, you can find a rate. And when somebody gives you a rate, hopefully you can identify the unit rate, the numerical part, and the rate unit, which is the label. All right, big learning targets here. So we are now taking this fixed relationship beyond just ratio value, and we're actually turning it into a ratio value that is based on a per 1. So 4 to 2 certainly has a ratio, and it has a value of 4 to 2, but we have 2 to 1, so now we have a unit rate. When we're taking one of the parts of the ratio and we are getting to a 1, then we have a unit rate. And of course, along the way, we have looked at various concepts and vocabulary for ratios, and we have worked with equivalent ratios. So that concludes a brief overview of Module 1, Lesson 16. If you have questions, make sure you talk to your teacher. Make sure that you also complete your problem set.